All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Tech Sales Insights, episode number 46. I'm honored to have John Jahnke, CEO of Tackleio, with me today. John, how you doing?
Good. How are you? It's Jahnke, Randy.
Jahnke. Sorry, I should know. Sorry.
It's all good. Everybody does it.
I was about to ask right as we were going live. Like, oh, I shouldn't ask you. So,
No worries.
Jahnke, sorry. And the title today is Enterprise Selling with Cloud Marketplaces, but I know we're going to cover a lot of ground and will be fantastic. We are sponsored by salescommunity.com. So for those that want to learn more and sell more, share best practices, network, certainly a great place to go. So before we dive in, we have a mutual friend, Andy O'Brien. So I asked for some thoughts that he might share because I know he worked with you a lot over the years. So he said some great things. He said, John built the pre-sales engine at Greenplum and Pivotal, two fantastic companies. Always a thought leader, took on large sales leadership roles, very customer focused, builds a great culture, lives by Paul Meritz's credo, give more than you take. So that sounds pretty good.
Those are pretty kind words. I don't know if I deserve them all, but I appreciate them.
So I'm sure very well deserved. So as we jump in here, maybe if you can just give us an idea of your professional background.
Sure. Yeah. So I started my career in IT. I actually was a Data General customer, and that found my way to EMC. After they acquired Data General, I became an SE at EMC in 2000 and stayed. I had the intention of going to the kind of supplier side for a couple of years and then going back and being a CIO, and ended up in the EMC family for 17 years. So mostly, first 10 years in the kind of primary EMC system, grew up in pre-sales and sales services. And then I transitioned to Greenplum after EMC acquired Greenplum, helped grow that company into, grow Greenplum as well as help the foundation of Pivotal, and spent a lot of time in that system. And then from there, I transitioned to Cognizant, where I was helping build a strategy for digital engineering. How do you take 65,000 software engineers and turn them into product engineers? So got to work with 250 of the Fortune 500, transforming their teams, which was a lot of fun, and got to use a lot of the practices we pioneered at Pivotal along the way. And then on that journey, Tackle, I actually was an investor in. Founders and I all worked together at Greenplum, and Dylan Woods, our founder and CTO, was like, hey, I think this cloud plus go to market is a thing. And I'm not exactly sure what I think marketplace is the foundation of, the cloud's disrupting the way that software is sold, and they're fraught with friction. And this was in 2014 at the time. It's like, I want to start experimenting with that as a hypothesis, and that became the foundation for Tackle. And I joined shortly after we felt we had product market fit in mid 2018.
Oh, that's great. So product market fit is a big thing these days. How did you know that you had it or felt that you had it, besides stating the obvious? But
yeah, no, it's and I always advise startups, it's like you got to go from 0 to 1, and at first it's 0 to 1 customer, and then you got to figure out how repeatable is it. Can you go from 1 to 10 customers, and then from there it's like go from 10 to 100, and you just decompose the problem. And for us, we played around with a few different value propositions, but the one that stuck was this middleware for cloud marketplace. And our very first customer was New Relic. And we went from New Relic to CyberArk, Druva, PagerDuty, WANDisco, Auth0 as our first customer cohort. And that was when we're like, oh, okay, that value prop is clearly resonating. And we leaned into helping that initial customer cohort be really successful, learned a ton from that, and then focused on transitioning from that, kind of 0 to 10 repeatability to thinking about scale. But it was, and to me, the advice I always give founders, it's about value. Like, are your users getting value from your product? If they are, you'll start to feel the pull from the market. If you're pushing value on them, you haven't gotten product market fit yet. So focus on that transition to pull and users getting value.
Yep. Well, very, very well said, for sure. What about any interests that you have outside of work, John?
Yeah, married with 3 kids. So our kids are 13, 11, 9, 2 girls and a boy. We live in Buffalo, New York. So we love 4-season life. A lot of outdoors, time in Lake Erie, big skier. Just went whitewater rafting this weekend. I'm kind of, in general, I'm a master of few things, but I enjoy many. So I tend to be the person that will say yes to new things. And then obviously love tech, love finance, and spend more than my fair share of time on those two topics.
Oh, great. So, I mean, you're a little different than some of the Silicon Valley, high growth companies. So you're in Buffalo, you got founders in Oregon, CRO, I think, is in Idaho, or vice versa. Sorry, CRO is in Oregon, founders in Idaho.
Yeah.
How does all that work?
Yeah. So, when we were getting the company started, we had a few key tenets, and one was remote. We had all worked for Bay Area, New York, Boston tech companies almost our entire career, which meant we spent 80% of our time traveling. And right as Tackle was getting going, GitLab had raised their Series A as a remote company. We're like, okay, someone can build a tier 1 venture-backed company with the hypothesis of remote. So that was core to us. So the second was, kind of work with people we like that are inspired by a common mission and changing the way that software is sold. We have a lot of people just in our history who are inspired by doing that. And then the last was capital efficient, because we had seen a lot of companies kind of try to burn a lot of money to solve problems. And we thought, there's a better way using lean startup, like nail it and scale it style principles to build a company. So and we've been successful in growing remote. It's all about talent and finding talent and enabling them to live their best life. And I think we talk about work-life integration, and flexibility, which is what everyone wanted. And the pandemic only accelerated the entire world to finding this point of view. And I think the big difference between intentionally building a company remote and being forced to be remote is, we thought from day one about the digital infrastructure of the company being the primary substrate. Like, everything is digital, and it's digital first at all times. It changes the way you communicate. It changes the way you manage your team. It increases transparency at all level. And I think most tacklers are extremely passionate about remote work and couldn't imagine working any other way. And I'll joke, you can't pay me enough to work in an office because the effort to get ready and to drive somewhere and to think about what I have to eat, like all of those things, it would consume 2 or 3 hours of my day that I could spend either doing more work or spending a little time with my family along the way or getting some exercise. So I think remote is here to stay.
Yeah, and you were remote way pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, we started remote in 2016. So we were remote before remote was cool. When we were raising our Series A, it was amazing. We ended up raising our Series A in March of the pandemic. So it was March of 2020. And at that time, it was amazing to see how hesitant tier 1 venture was still on remote companies. And Bessemer was an investor in our seed round, and we already had, who I think's one of the best, most world-class SaaS investors supporting us, and they believed in not only the mission of the company but in the philosophy we were taking to build it. So it's just interesting to see. And then fast forward a year, we ended up doing our Series B, and we closed late January of 21, and everything had turned. Everyone's like, yeah, remote's the greatest, 100%, high fives. You guys have been doing this forever. So it's pretty funny to see that turn.
Wow. Yeah, and it was congratulations. I think, was it $35 million Series B in March, right?
Yeah. It went public in March. The term sheet signed January 19th. It was led by Andreessen and supported by Bessemer, which we feel very fortunate to have two amazing partners on the journey with us.
Yeah, great names for sure. Congratulations. So maybe pivoting over to the sales side. So maybe talk a little bit about your kind of sales model. First off, maybe who do you actually sell to? Kind of what's your profile of company, and then what kind of decision makers in the company?
Yeah, so as a company, just kind of short, so Tackle, we help software companies list, sell, and scale through the cloud marketplaces. So we make that a business decision instead of a product and engineering decision. People will partner with Tackle and use our platform to eliminate any of the engineering work they would have had to do to launch in AWS, Azure, or GCP marketplaces today. So that's our business. So we sell exclusively to software companies, and the personas tend to be a handful of different people. One, revenue executives who are thinking about how do I open new pathways to revenue and tap into the ever expanding cloud budgets. Two, partner executives who are trying to figure out, how do I take advantage of partnering with the cloud providers who oftentimes are very high on the list of target partners for software companies. And then the third group is product executives who are faced with the dilemma of, our business wants to embrace these cloud marketplace and we don't have resources. Like our product backlog's full. Like we don't have a couple engineers lying around to go figure out how to build one of these integrations. So those are the three personas that we sell to today. And our business model, we do have a group of sellers who focus on companies that we break our segmentation down into kind of three core segments. One, the top 100 software companies in the world. Two is the growth companies, because those investing massively in scaling their go-to-market, that oftentimes is the spot where cloud marketplace becomes part of the conversation. And then the three is seed stage startup companies who are all thinking about how to build their go-to-market more efficiently. And marketplace is becoming, for a lot of those companies, an easy road to drive on. Access the budget, access the contract, and you're seeing more and more startups say, I want to build my company marketplace native, and then think about evolving around that from a go-to-market standpoint. So we have all those different teams and target those personas. We do get a lot of referrals and inbound just from people who discover Tackle. As you start to think about marketplacing, we're pretty content forward company. So if you start poking around at cloud marketplaces, you tend to find your way to Tackle.
Well, that's great. So we have a question from Jesse. So as a reminder, I haven't said yet. So for those that are watching on, please post any questions that you want. We'll do our best to get to them. You can see us. We cannot see you, but certainly in the comment section, post any questions or comments, or if you know John, feel free to heckle him. Anyway, so Jesse, thank you. Jesse asked, John, cold email or cold call? What do you prefer?
Yeah, it's a great question. I am a cold email. If you ever wanted to get in touch with me, if you crafted a very, very well-written email that's focused on helping us deliver value to our customers, employees, I will read them. 99.999% of the time I will not respond. But I have responded to very well-written cold emails. My phone is set to never take a phone call that is not in my phone book, so don't even bother trying to call me.
Yeah, I mean, I find it amazing. I'm sure we both get reach outs, but I get, even just for a sales community, people that will reach out, and it's just so generic. I mean, all I have to do is spend, 5 minutes just identifying anything and then I had one last week. Of course, I'm forgetting the name. Would love to say his name, but that was a product I wasn't interested in. But I just said, hey, I take the call. I sent him my Calendly. I said, happy to do a Zoom with you. And it was a young sales professional, blah blah. And I said, take this more as coaching. I said, what you did is fantastic. Hardly happens. So the more that you can do that, you're going to get a return. At bat, 100%. Much more so than anywhere else. And it's always a mix. I mean, I'm glad you said you look at the emails, because I think similar to that I do, and I think a lot of the senior execs, a lot of people assume that they don't, but I'd argue more times than not, I think people do, and things can get passed along. So as Jesse says, great answer. And then also with sales community, we're talking beforehand, but I think for your sellers, we've got a lot of members, but especially the advisory board folks that are, and thank you for being on the advisory board as well. A lot of those we have common. I think customers like a Sneak. We've had Peter McKay on the broadcast, but maybe you could tell us about some of the impressive names, other company names that you have as customers.
Yeah, we work with a lot of companies of different stage, like seed stage up to some of the largest software companies in the world. Some of the early customers I mentioned, like a New Relic or a Druva or an Auth0, who recently got acquired by Okta. In more the growth stage companies like hypergrowth. So 45% of the Cloud 100 work with Tackle, just as a stat.
Wow,
and,
that's a great stat.
Companies like Sneak and HashiCorp have been longtime customers of ours. And then, we work with some of the largest software companies in the world. VMware is a longtime customer. Dell is a customer of ours, IBM and Red Hat and Salesforce. And all of those companies everyone's trying to figure out how do I make my product relevant in the cloud era. So there's product level thought and a lot of product integration that's been happening over time. But as kind of cloud infrastructure becomes more common from cloud provider to cloud provider, they think more about how to differentiate with go-to-market, because one, they want software companies to build on their cloud, which means really efficient and scalable and well-designed cloud core services. But it also, if they can differentiate by providing access to their customer base, that will encourage companies to also run on the infrastructure. And I think the future of cloud consumption, a lot of it will be SaaS companies. The SaaS companies will become the aggregation points for the cloud providers in the future. But you'll also see the combination of first and third party services be the components of every build, because you very rarely will consume 100% from AWS, 100% from Microsoft, 100% from Google. You're going to say, I'm going to grab Circle CI and I'm going to grab GitHub and I'm going to grab, all these other components as I'm looking at best of breed data technology, Snowflake or Cockroach. And I'm going to use these components and they may run on top of cloud infrastructure, but they're a combination of first and third party, which I think is the future of most builds.
Wow, it's fantastic. So Jesse's popping in here with another question. You've worked with revenue greats like Andrew Ettinger. People understand collaboration between sales and marketing. What do you do to make sure your sales and marketing teams work together well and are aligned?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think such a key element. Randy and I were actually talking about this earlier. So our CRO owns, all elements of sales and revenue, as well as all elements of customer success, because those are two very tightly coupled things. But our VP of marketing reports directly to me. So they're peers in the organization, but have common focus goals. And this is, it's really getting everyone aligned to the same outcome, which is, helping win new customers, helping those customers be successful, helping them get to their desired outcome, and then understanding their feedback, both good and bad, and figuring out how to build great content with the good feedback and figuring out how to make your product better with the bad feedback, and then turning that into a cycle. So that's bigger. I always think about the 4 core systems of the company. Product is the company. Sales is how you get it in the hands of the user. Customer success is how you make them happy, and marketing is how you tell everyone about it. And if you can get those 4 aligned towards common goals, great things happen. So, and I think a lot of this even comes back to remote. In a remote world, it's really easy for leaders to get their heads down, and be laser focused on. Sorry, my Ring doorbell.
It usually happens with me, so I'm glad of somebody.
I muted my computer, but not my phone.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's easy for leaders to get kind of laser focused on just their function, because hyper growth companies are all consuming, but kind of keeping that, whether you use OKRs or whatever kind of goals framework you use, using that to drive priority that are cross-functional has been a really good thing for us.
So let me ask you, you put kind of marketing at the back end in that list. What about marketing's role in, I'll say, the lead generation? Some people say MQLs, most people prefer kind of SQLs, but kind of really helping your sales team sell more. Yeah,
so we and it wasn't meant to be at the back of the list. It's like an integral component of the system. But the way we grew up very customer focused, and the first thing we did for marketing was content centric. It was the concept of great content drives leads, and then from there, once you get past great content, social proof drives referrals. So everyone wants to hear the story of success from someone that looks and feels like them. So the social proof side. So we focused our marketing efforts there, and then worked our way down towards trying to drive lead gen and building an SDR system and building an ABM system. So today that is an integral part of the system, and they do we get a fair amount of inbound, so our SDRs manage inbound, and then we have outbound SDRs. Then we're doing ABM, and we have an ABM program for that top 100, and then we'll work our way down as our ABM system evolves. But we're in a fortunate state where we're trying to rebalance the system between kind of inbound and direct. It's been 80% inbound, and get it more towards 50-50, where we're complementing the inbound with a well-run kind of holistic sales and marketing system.
That's great. So on that ABM of the top 100, so presumably you've got 45 of the 100 as customers, and then so you've got another 55, then you're kind of doing some specific targeted activities to try and get 100 out of the 100?
Yeah, and the Cloud 100 is different than our top 100, because the Cloud 100 is the top 100 private companies as designated by Forbes and Salesforce and Bessemer. So the top 100 for us are the 100 largest software companies in the world. So we do have, kind of in some of the lists I talked about, like the Salesforce, the VMwares, the Dells, the IBMs, the Red Hats fall into that category. But they tend to be portfolio software companies that have products of all ages, could have very legacy products, could have some very cloud forward products, but they're all trying to figure out the context for them in the future. So we're just trying to help meet them where they are and help them go on a journey to build cloud go-to-market in a thoughtful way. Because it's not take everything you have and stick it in the cloud. That didn't work with infrastructure. It doesn't work with selling. It's pick off the thing that makes the most sense to start with a cloud go-to-market, go build the muscle of kind of marketplacing with that, and then inform your strategy to evolve from there.
Oh, that's great. And I won't get into it, but I think I've got a follow-up sales call here, because certainly a lot of those companies, we've got CRO and executive friends, CEOs that are probably there. So I think there's a bunch of ways where sales community and I can help you. So
yeah, we'd love that.
Won't get into that here. So from Adam Brown, can you talk about brand awareness strategies for sales teams in the field? Many startups run marketing efforts on a shoestring budget. So how do you advise ISRs and field sellers?
Yeah, it's as we built our sales system, we took a page out of our time at Pivotal, which, Pivotal had a pretty opinionated methodology around building software and using pairing. And we took that approach to, sell together. So every new seller would sell with another seller for a period of time to really get the feel of what good looks like. And this was before we had a true sales enablement program. But that kind of is part of the culture where there's a lot of selling together to show people what good looks like. And I think that's a really good practice when you're small. And then from there, it's all about the stories. Like, stories sell. You can enable someone to give a pitch, but the pitch will not resonate anywhere near as much as a story about a successful user and the whys behind they were successful. So we spend a fair amount of time trying to build content around user stories that I think make it much easier for, especially, sellers earlier in their career. They can connect with a story. The buyer can connect with the story, and they can be like, hey, there's some details we'll have to work out. I'm going to bring in an SE or someone who has a lot more depth to help us navigate to the next step.
Well, it's great. I actually have talking about storytelling. Coincidentally, after this, I'm in Jesse got me roped into this, something that's called go-to-market games. So we had something yesterday, and I guess one person gets voted off the island, so I survived. And today's on storytelling, and it's Justin Michael does a great job running it. And what the heck? I want to say it's Kevin Lacey from Lessonly, I think, is the one who's kind of moderating it. So I had to come up with something around storytelling myself. But
social proof. Robert Cialdini is a professor at Harvard, wrote this whole thing about influence theory, and social proof is like the number one element of storytelling.
And all this stimulation in the brains of how it, kind of lights everything up, I guess. So we're talking a little about SDRs. Maybe talk about the role of the SDR at Tackle. And then kind of what's the career path, right? Because all these younger generation, like, okay, hey, I've been here a month. Okay, I'm ready to be the CRO. So kind of how do you kind of throttle, engage the kind of development, the process for SDRs?
Yeah, and this is we're huge believers in kind of career progression and building a system where people can move from layer to layer as they prove themselves. And the way we built it out, we have, inbound SDRs as the kind of foundation. So receiving a warm lead from an inbound is one of the easiest things to handle. And then from there, evolving towards outbound SDRs, which has a much more kind of segmented focus around, customers and trying to share stories with those customers on why they might be interested in us. From there, they would progress into an inside sales role. And inside sales at Tackle is really it's not, inside's probably the wrong word since we're remote, everybody's inside, but it's really startup sales, and they focus on seed stage and Series A companies, which have a slightly different profile. Then we go to our new logo sales people, which is more focused on the growth stage company. And then we have enterprise sellers who are focused on that, top 100. So ideally, people would progress through that pathway and be able to grow in the system for a long period of time.
That's great. And then presumably you've got good communication, so that way they know what they need to do in order to take the next step.
Yeah, and this is where we are a hyper growth. I mean, in full transit, we were 52 people at the start of the year. We're 120 today. So we're growing really fast. So we're building some of those pathways and details and ways to make that happen. But yes, that's 100% our intention.
Oh, that's great. I always find in the performance management process, making sure that they have those expectations, but as much as the individual, wants to, hear from the manager, I always say to the individual, hey, you should tell your manager what can the manager do different or better to help you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, feedback and having the confidence to give feedback. We believe deeply in servant leadership. Like, leaders are here to help people do their best work. I'm here to help every employee do their best work. And that means there needs to be a two-way dialogue around what's working, what's not, and what help you need. And that takes a certain type of empathy as well as confidence to do. And I honestly, I love doing calls with our more junior sellers, like SDRs and inside sellers. It's a lot of fun for me, and I try to make time for it on a weekly basis because I can help them. Hopefully they can help me, and that's a good thing.
Wow, that's great. So you're actually then hands-on yourself, then doing calls and involved in the sales process. So I understand. I would think at the higher end accounts, but you're actually will get in the weeds with some SDRs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about having an understanding of the market. So, we see that entire range of software company as our prospective customer, and they all have slightly different needs. So yeah. I like to stay involved in all three segments, because you can get really skewed if you only focus on the ones that are super teed up, the big deals, the top 100. You get skewed on where the market is. And there's a lot more seed and Series A stage companies than there are the top 100. So trying to keep an eye on both sides of that. And so I try to balance my time amongst all of those. And then I do more top of the funnel activities, just, marketing and content and public speaking, which turns into, some leads. So people will engage with me directly. And then it's a chance for me to just see how those teams are doing, how well they're enabled, how successful they can be in our current system.
What a great opportunity for SDR to learn and develop on a call with you. So
I'm an SE at heart, like deep down, and Joe Tucci, when he started at EMC, he started his career as an SE, and that was like, hey, I guess I could be like Joe. And 25 years later, I'm in the seat. So I still am an SE at heart.
There you go. Fantastic. All right. So Jesse is back. He asks, where does automation work in the sales process? Where does it fail?
Yeah, I'm probably less qualified to answer that question. I think, for us, we're implementing systems and processes. We went through the evolution on the CRM side. We started with Pipedrive, then we went to HubSpot, then we evolved to Salesforce. We're just implementing tools like SalesLoft, and we just purchased an ABM tool. I don't actually know what the name of it is. We use Gong pretty extensively. We use Drift from a conversational marketing standpoint. So lots of different tools. And I think, as a remote company, you think about how to use digital infrastructure always. So we're always thinking about other tools we can use to make the process better. But as far as where it's breaking down, Don would be a better qualified person. Don Addington's our CRO, would be a better qualified to answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We're finding, you go back 10 years ago, you had Salesforce and LinkedIn and, onesie, twosie others. Now there's, hundreds or thousands of, forget about marketing tools, just, sales tools. And it's amazing. We've had a lot of inbound interest from a lot of those companies that want help, and interestingly enough. But we're talking before, kind of with Gong. Can you share any experiences as an example using Gong as a great sales tool?
Yeah, I think the question around sales enablement, Gong is incredibly powerful to show people what good and bad looks like. And building a sales organization that's confident enough to share examples, almost like, hey, here's the highlight reel and here's the bloopers. Like, don't do that, do that. I think we used it a lot for enablement. It's also, I think transcription is really powerful, just to be, if you're a reader versus a watcher. Transcription is really powerful, being able to look at the balance of conversations and, even search for what are people saying and when. Like during the pandemic, we'd always search for, how often was COVID coming up on sales calls, and just be able to see, like, is this, are people really concerned or not? And I think it gives you a chance to go back and review as well. I think especially at the top end of opportunities, like in really complex situations, having a chance to go back and rewind history and be like, what did we actually say? What did they say? Like, how can we better interpret that? I think is so powerful. So I'm a huge fan of Gong. I think it's a great product, great tool. It's been really good for us.
It's great. And for those watching and members of our community, they will be soon announced as one of several sponsors of Sales Community. So thanks for giving a great shout out and a great perspective there. What was I? Oh yeah. So talking about on the sales side, so you got the tools, you got the people, the SDRs, management, and all that. So what are some things that you're kind of challenged with as you think about growing sales in that top line?
Yeah, I think focus is always a challenge. We have 300-ish customers, and thinking about going to 1,000. The number of software companies in the world, I think there's a wide range. Some people say there's hundreds of thousands. I think Jay McBain from Forrester said there's 200,000 today. It'll be 1 million by 2025. The number of startups getting funded, I mean, not surprising there, but just keeping focus, and then building teams at all those different layers, and getting to the point where how do we, it's not easy. It's building sales is hard at every phase, and it takes a ton of work and a ton of intention, and just thinking about the scale and thinking differently. Like everyone we are bringing in now, we can't rely upon them pairing with another rep who's enabled as their method of enablement. We actually have to have a more structured sales enablement process. So we hired someone to focus on that. And I think getting those pieces to go from initiated to fully functional is an area for us that will take a lot of time. I think, outside of that, really understanding, like, pricing and packaging to me is an interesting problem. It's kind of outside of sales, but it's something so many companies struggle with. Like, how do you think about your target customer, and how do you think about the options you have for pricing and packaging in order to remove friction from the initiation of a relationship, as well as ensure you're capturing value in alignment with customers getting value. So as we think about those segments and think about the value we create for our customers, pricing and packaging is actually an area that and it's funny how often I hear from other startup CEOs that, pricing and packaging is a challenge. They're paying consultants lots of money to do research. Their product teams are spending lots of time to do research, and can have such huge implications on your long-term success. So that's another area that we're thinking a lot about. And then, I mean, the last area might be enabling our customers, which is kind of outside of selling. But if you go back to the 4 parts you have to do to be successful, kind of product, sales, customer success, and marketing, like how enablement flows through all of them, and how you teach, we feel like we're teaching the world the marketplace. We're teaching people how to do these new go-to-market. So enablement for our customers, not just getting them started, but helping them succeed and succeed at scale, is something alongside of sales that's really important to us.
So before I get to Jesse's question, as a reminder for those watching, feel free to ask any questions you want. John is obviously very open and authentic and sharing with us some fantastic perspectives. So talking about customer success, are there any, like a Gainsight or any tools there that you're using, or is it mostly just kind of people-centric right now?
We're in the Google phase. We do use a tool called Workbase. We do use Salesforce for elements of customer success. We have a few different chapters of our customer success journey happening. We're actually adding we're hiring a new VP of customer success. If anybody knows anyone awesome that's inspired by changing the way software sold, send them my way. But yeah, we haven't landed on our future state from a customer success standpoint.
All right. And you're also, I'll give you a shout out, you're looking for somebody to that's public about the sales leadership role, correct?
Yeah, so we are hiring a VP of sales in the Americas, and really looking for someone who's been through the like $20 to $100 million phase of SaaS, B2B SaaS, transactional, super customer centric, very cloud forward would be ideal state. We're interesting because we're kind of an infrastructure company and kind of a fintech. Mm-hmm. And when you only sell to software companies, it can be a ton of fun because you can take your life's work and apply it to helping many others do things differently. So that would be a plug for the VP of sales role.
There you go. All right. So Jesse's back. Thank you, Jesse. John, how do senior sellers figure out how to digitally transform? Great example is Randy. I'm not sure about that. He has old school methods. You can say I'm old school. But he's learned ultimately by trying, and now has a top 5 sales brand in SaaS sales. So I guess the idea is senior seller, I guess politely said, kind of older sellers digitally transforming. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would lump myself. I've been at the sales business for almost 25 years now, and I used to think about channels and adding anyone into the middle of the process as risk. And in this era of digital selling, you have to think differently about how the parties in the middle can help. And I think marketplaces are a great example of that because, their access to budget, like the cloud budget's the fastest growing budget line item in most companies. And if you can find a way to connect your software with the cloud budget and say, would it be easier to buy from us on your cloud bill? That's really powerful. And you have to think differently. Like some people look at marketplaces and the cloud providers as channels, which they are in some ways, but they're channels that behave very differently than traditional channels. And I think, our hypothesis is the future of sales will be digitally based. So that doesn't mean salespeople go away. That means sellers will help buyers buy digitally. And you think about walking into a car dealership today, when you encounter a car salesperson, they actually pull up the iPad and go to the website of the car manufacturer. Everything's in a common place. The 2 systems of collaboration in enterprise software sales are email and spreadsheets. It's like going into the Stone Ages. And if you thought about what it means to really digitally sell, it would be, how do I collaborate with my buyer in a way where we're both operating on the same sheet of music? How do I enable communication that's outside of email, that I can actually track and understand what they're consuming and why they're consuming it? Pricing and packaging, I think, will evolve tremendously in this era of digital sales. You can't change your pricing and packaging in a localized way. Like you think in a consumer world, you could actually target, market, and price in a state. Be like, in this state, we're going to price this way as an experiment. You could A/B test it. Like, how do you do that in enterprise software? It's completely impossible. So, and I think we're at the starting point of a digital transformation of sales for B2B. And this has happened in consumer because consumer is way simpler. And marketplaces for us are the first manifestation. That's really easy to embrace. It's, you can tap in, you can sell your enterprise selling way and tap into cloud budget to do a first deal faster or do a repeat deal bigger. Like that's a winning story. And so it makes it really easy for people to start. And then I think over time, you'll see a lot of technology, a lot of processes being reinvented as like digital multi-channel e-commerce, takes over in B2B.
Yeah. And then as that transforms, maybe go, 10 years out where it's going to be, probably crazy automation across all these different areas. What do you think about kind of relationships as it relates to the selling process?
Yeah, I think relationships and trust will always be key, but it will be grounded in value. Like, what value are you as a product company delivering? What value are you as an individual delivering? I think, in some ways you can see, especially at the high end, like strategic selling is an art, and you're oftentimes helping people bring the future to life. Like, that's not going to change. If anything, that will become even more specialized. In the middle, you're going to make it really easy for people to get started and help give them what they need in order to initiate a journey, and then help them, succeed with you as they're getting value. So that's a pretty significant transition from where we are today. It looks almost more like customer success in some ways.
Yeah. Walter Brown, who's since passed, but I've got a couple of his sales books are embedded in my book, one for sales reps, one for sales managers. Ken Doherty and Chris Riley are big around some of the sayings that Walter used to say, but kind of know me, like me, trust me, right? So if you kind of have that trust, as you said, that it helps get you the at bat, and certainly in the door probably faster and better because you've kind of proven yourself and commanded that trust and respect over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
So what about if you think about on maybe the likes or differences, or I want to touch on the cultural side, but you've kind of gone through some evolutions where you have the EMC and Pivotal side. I'm sure that was very different from Cognizant. I'm sure that was very different from Tackleio. Kind of any perspectives there?
Yeah, growing up in the EMC system was amazing. I learned so much, and it was really the customer centricity that always, spoke to me, and from all different levels, and whether it was as a SE or as a salesperson or as a district manager or regional manager, the best people always help their customers succeed. And I think it also was very much a work hard and have fun culture, which I think is super important. If you're going to spend a significant amount of your life working, you want to have a good time along the way and do it with people that you like. So I think Pivotal was super innovative. Like, we were on the front end of a lot of really mega movements, and being truly on the bleeding edge is pretty interesting from an enterprise selling standpoint. Just understanding how to translate the future towards companies who are at all different phases of evolution. So I look back at the time at Pivotal and just learned so much about emerging technology and innovation. And Cognizant was about super scale, like 250,000 employees, and it's having 4,000 or 5,000 people working in a single customer, and from the range of people doing the lowest level work to really, really strategic people. So that was a fascinating journey just around scale, super scale. And then for Tackle, you really tried to take elements of all of those. We are extremely customer focused. It is, helping our customers succeed and sell is what we live to do. And we do that by building a product that eliminates friction, and partnering closely with the clouds to complement what they do, and then getting them to their desired outcome, and listening deeply about how we can get better along the way. So try to take pieces and parts of all of those journeys and weave them into the culture of Tackle.
That's great. I remember Andy would bring me a couple times to Pivotal office in New York, where you had, I think it was so great of how EMC kind of really kept it, pretty much standalone, right? And you had that as its own, and you had that, the morning meetings and the shout outs and, all that, that keeping that, small company culture at Pivotal. So I would imagine there's a lot there that you've kind of replicated over at Tackle, correct?
Yeah. I think Paul Moritz, would often talk just about how culture eats strategy for breakfast, and really was the first time I was at a company where there was such a heavy focus on culture from the top. So that always resonated deeply with me. I think the other elements of culture, it's like trying to get people aligned in mission. Like people really want to be part of a mission and believe deeply in the mission that you're attacking. And that was something else I think, Pivotal did a really great job of trying to get people inspired by the fact that changing the way, software is eating the world, and changing the way that software is built is key to the future of every company. And having the mission be really clear and simple. I think for us, it's, changing the way software is sold. Like software has been sold the same way forever. And we're at this like dawn of a significant change that, I think can be a lot of fun. And acquiring customers, the most expensive part of everyone's budget. So having a chance to, if you could take 5% out of cost of acquiring customers or increase revenue by making it that much more efficient, those are really powerful areas to be inspired by mission-wise.
Oh, great. What about anything that you do on the diversity side in terms of best practices or culturally there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, we started really early on diversity, and that's the advice I give all founders and executives. Like trying to become a diverse company when you're offset or maybe look more like industry norms is really hard. And the sooner you invest in trying to, get balance and alignment from a diversity standpoint, bring all the best opinions to the table early, the better off you'll be. So I think we focused on, thinking about it at all levels of the company, kind of, first line, second line, top line, and always think about how do we just get better. It's, when you're a fast growing company, you need people to do work, and we're always looking for the best talent, but we're always trying to keep, the diversity lens top of mind, because it's easy to make excuses that, I can't find a person, or, there's no one qualified for whatever role, but, you really have to hold yourself accountable to try harder, look deeper, meet people where they are, even if those people don't, look like the people in your network.
Well, that's great. What about any kind of, you'd mentioned, Paul, kind of coaching or advice that you've received over the years that's really stuck with you?
Yeah, I've had so many mentors along the way. I feel so fortunate. Like I'd call Andy a mentor. I learned a lot from Andy around, sales specifically. Dave Sheehan and I worked really closely together at EMC, and I learned a ton from Dave. Leo Spiegel, who's on our board, he became a mentor of mine at Greenplum and Pivotal, and has just really helped me kind of find my way to being a CEO. Like there's not a lot of jobs where everyone that works for you knows more about what they do than you do, which is what being a CEO is. And that, your job is to help everyone do their best work. And maybe you have a couple like strong clubs in the bag to pull out from time to time, but your job is to let them play those clubs and not you. So many people. And I think like the advice I give to a lot of like, especially earlier stage founders, it's you have to build a network of people around you that you can call and be, comfortable enough to ask what could be stupid questions, and know they're going to tell you the truth. Like, so start early. Like you're never too early. You should do this immediately. And if you connect with people and identify with the way that they work and feel like you can learn from everybody, but you want to forge those deeper relationships and maintain them over time. And there's a group of people I've known my entire professional career that I can still call, and they've seen every chapter of John on this journey, and they could go back and be like, yeah, remember when you did that? That was really stupid. Like you should have learned, and you're doing that again. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for telling me the truth and knowing enough of the story to have the context that matters.
That's great. Really well said, especially, you didn't say it exactly, but kind of making sure you've got those that are kind of better and smarter than you across each one of those functional areas. So
100%. Yeah. And you have to, like, we're at the point where I'm out, thinking about what our next level advisors look like for the company, and who are the people who built billion-dollar ARR businesses, and how can we learn from them and think about scale in different ways. I think we're really bullish on the future, but company, cloud is a winner take most market, and the winners tend to win at mega scale. So you really have to stretch yourself to think bigger, broader, and find new people who've lived through those situations that maybe aren't the people that helped you get to where you are.
Yep, absolutely. And again, if you look at the advisory board sales community, there's a bunch of folks there that would probably qualify. So I can help with any introductions, certainly happy to do that. And then what about, so we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. So for those that are watching, last chance, feel free to ask any questions. And John, you've been fantastic. What about any advice you would give your younger self?
Yeah, I think it's, kind of learning, prioritize learning, is one thing I've learned along the way. And I always was naturally curious, but I think earlier in my career, I maybe got distracted by title, or I got distracted by money, both of which are important in different ways. But I think prioritizing learning first and going back to where do I want to go and what can I learn to help me get there versus, what title am I pursuing, or how do I make more money, is one advice I'd give. I think another thing would be slow down. A friend who's Keith Salisbury, we worked at Pivotal, and he was a Navy SEAL, and he was like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I think that advice, I definitely always like to operate at warp speed, and I continue to like to operate at high velocity, but sometimes slowing down is the best thing. And that was advice other people gave me a lot. Ed Burt, as a ex-EMC person, I remember, would give me that advice, like, slow down, it's okay. Like, take a deep breath. You don't always have to be moving at Mach 2. So those would be two areas. And I think, so back to the kind of mentors and advisors, always be surrounding yourself, and you said it, with how do you find people that you can learn from, and people you identify with, not always necessarily the absolute smartest person, but a combination of empathy and intelligence. At least for me, those are the people I always identified most with, because they operated in a way that I connected with, and it was I want to be a good human and do great work. So try to figure out what matters to you, and identify those people, and forge relationships, and maintain them.
That's great. So you talk about learning. First off, how do you learn now?
So I read a ton. A huge consumer of just emerging tech information from all directions. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn, you build a good network over time. Great people share great things in those networks. So I consume a lot on LinkedIn. I do love to read. I don't get the chance to read as much as I used to, but definitely enjoy reading, and I love learning from other people. So I'm always interested in seeking out others to learn from, as well as trying to help. I think I've had the great fortune to have some success along the way, and being able to pay back to others, pay it forward the way so many people paid to me over time, is important to me. So I do try to help others, especially in Buffalo. Buffalo's not known as the tech metropolis, but there's a pretty fast growing startup scene here, and being able to help other founders who want to go on tier 1 venture backed journeys is something I love to do.
Oh, that's great. I think you're going to have a bright future in that going forward, for sure.
I can only hope. If we keep helping our customers succeed, the future should stay bright.
There you go. Future's so bright, you got to wear shades, right? So Nour is usually on doing the interview. He's facilitating offsite management retreat right now, but a little awkward coming from me. So if you don't have anything, it's okay. But he usually asks if there's any funny Randy story.
Yeah, I think I don't know you as well as maybe some of your other guests have, so they probably have far funnier stories. The story of Randy that I would tell would be So we were raising money. It was a convertible note at the time, and you had, I think, heard about it some way. I'm not exactly sure. It may have been from Andy or someone else. And you had reached out, and I'm like, oh, Randy, he looks like a pretty serious guy. Why is he reaching out to me? And I was super busy and didn't get back to you. And you were very persistent in following up. And then we finally got on the phone and talked. I'm like, oh man, I feel so bad that I wasn't responding to you, because you were super interesting and obviously had a ton of history of success. So, I appreciated your persistence and, kind of seeing what we thought we were up to and wanting to be part of it. So that was an awesome thing, and the thing I always think about when I think about you.
Great. Well, thanks. It's interesting as I reflect back. I haven't really done that much. So, Andy, obviously in hindsight, would have said some great things about you, and I think the vision that you had in the space that you were kind of creating to be a leader in this space is fantastic. And it's one thing to have the vision, but the other thing is now to be able to execute is fantastic. And I guess selfishly for the so far the return on the investment's been fantastic. So I will be cheering loud and proud for you along the way and doing whatever I can to help for sure.
And hopefully we're just getting started. So
exactly, fantastic. So all right, well, it's been a great time with you. Certainly, as we said, the perspectives are great. Just the leadership, the development, SDRs, sales, management tools, everything across the board. So again, for those watching, we're brought to you by Sales Community. For those that haven't, where it is, my book there up in the corner. Lots of great tips and tricks that anybody that's interested in sales, even if you're not in sales, check it out. It's on Amazon, or you can see our URL there, salescommunity.com/book. And with that, we'll wish everybody a great day and a great week. And John, thanks again. And also thank you for Tucker, who's behind the scenes helping facilitate all this.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.